is Matthew Ward, and tonight I will be doing a refutation speech based on the claim of facts presented by Ms. Nicole McGinnis. In her claim, she states that the Cal State budget cuts are affecting student and faculty interest in education. Now, while I do agree that the Cal State system is experiencing unprecedented budget cuts, I do not agree with her ideology that this is somehow causing more and more students and teachers to lose their faith in an affordable education. Just to paraphrase some of her key supporting points, her first secondary claim primarily talked about the actual budget cuts in the Cal State system, which I will go over in a little bit. Her second claim referenced an article in the Poly Post in which she said that students on campus are preferring to attend more popular universities that don't have any budget restrictions like USC. And her last claim, and I'll read it, she says, teachers believe that students lack interest in the topic being presented, but students as well feel teachers lack interest in the students. Therefore, my counterclaim is Cal State budget cuts and student/teacher attitudes on education are unaffected. Or, I'm sorry, are unrelated. All right, so my first supporting claim was that Ms. McGinnis relied too heavily on opinions to advance her claim. My opponent's first secondary claim gives factual data on the actual budget cuts that are being made for the 08 through 09 and 2009 through 2010 fiscal years, which, when added up, reduces the Cal State budget by approximately $283 million, or 10% below its current operational needs. These numbers are indeed unfortunate and unchallenged, but my real dispute lies with Ms. McGinnis's reliance on a small number of student and teacher opinions to determine that this is responsible for the disinterest in a Cal State education. She cites only one Cal Poly student and a YouTube video produced by Cal State Fullerton as being the reasons students are losing their interest in education. While this may serve as emotional grounds, it does not warrant a solid backing of interest levels throughout the entire 450,000 Cal State student population. Additionally, she references only one teacher from one major, which in my opinion does not capture the teacher population effectively either. My second dispute was that Ms. McGinnis lacks proper source citations. My opponent's second supporting claim cites an article from the Poly Post which mentions that students are beginning to dislike the Cal State system, preferring to attend more popular colleges that have no restriction on budget, such as private universities like USC. Immediately, I was taken aback by the fact that Ms. McGinnis did not even mention or cite in her bibliography which Poly Post edition, page, or section she extracted this information from. The missing data alone is damaging to her argument. A search online at the Poly Post website turned up 0 results. Therefore, I have no choice but to throw out this second supporting claim, as it cannot be proven as to where this information originated from. My last dispute was that I felt that my opponent mistook opinions for facts. Ms. McGinnis concludes with her last supporting claim that teachers are not interested in teaching students and students are not interested in being taught. After checking her sources, it became clear that this was merely a matter of opinion, not fact. She goes on to state that teachers are lecturing on autopilot and that student-teacher relationships are not prospering as much as they could be. Additionally, she implies that since teachers are anticipating being laid off due to budget cuts, this causes them to demonstrate mediocre teaching skills. Her bibliography list references several different websites, all with the exception of one, talk only about Cal State budget cuts and not how these cuts are affecting teacher or student relationships. There were no inferences in the articles cited to acknowledge her theories, and therefore I treat them only as opinions, not concrete facts. Apart from these infractions, Ms. McGinnis has presented us with a noble cause. Perhaps she is correct to assume spirits have dropped since the announcement of the Cal State budget cuts, and this is indeed affecting student and teacher attitudes in regards to what an affordable education is. However, for the time being, there is no documented proof on a wide scale that supports her argument. We must assume that there is no connection between budget cuts and attitudes at large. Therefore, I must stand by my counterclaim until new evidence surfaces. Thank you.
All right. The challenges are clearly signposted. You accept the factual issues about the budget cuts, so there's no dispute there. There's an okay preview. I thought the pacing at the beginning was a little bit slow, but it seemed more appropriate as you went on. The challenges basically to the relationship that's being claimed by the advocate, and I think that's the right place to be making your argument. The grounds on the first point is basically challenged on being insubstantial. You've got one student in the one video and you put it in the context of 455,000 students in the system. I think that that's pretty reasonable. It would be nice if you had some counter evidence to suggest, for instance, that there is in fact enthusiasm for the Cal State system. Some simple information, for instance, about the number of admissions that people are applying for every year, or the transfer rates and whether or not they remain relatively high, or the demand for classes. There's a lot of information that might suggest an opposite conclusion there that would strengthen the criticism that you're presenting there. The challenge on the source and the evidence that the advocate used about that people are preferring private universities, for instance, I thought that you made a reasonable effort to find the information. You explained what the problem was and why you couldn't find it. But you are kind of dependent in this situation on saying, so we should reject it because it's inadequately cited. And I think from a technical point of view, that's a pretty valid point. I do think, however, that again, a counterclaim here is pretty straightforward. Is it really realistic that students who are attending Cal State universities would suddenly prefer universities that charge 10 times as much simply because of the budget cuts? That seems to me to be, the most obvious counterclaim on that point that might have made a stronger argument on the point. The challenge on the evidence that you have is okay, and I think that it's very reasonable, but I don't think it's as strong an argument as it could be. And then the argument about the equivocation of opinion versus fact on the last point, that's pretty reasonable. And again, this is one of those things where a simple counterexample would allow us to maybe suggest that we could make a generalization in the opposite direction. Although you probably don't want to commit the same fallacy, I could understand that, but you could point out how easy it would be to make such a statement and then show that that's a good reason not to believe that a single example is enough to prove this conclusion there. All right, thank you.